Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tap the like button if this story touches you. I remember the first time I truly feared my own reflection. I was a child still, no more than 12, standing barefoot on the creaking boards of my bedroom, staring into the narrow mirror that leaned against the wall. The frame was scratched, the glass warped with faint ripples, but what I saw staring back at me was not myself. At least, not entirely. The eyes seemed darker, wider, filled with knowledge I should not have had. Her mouth twitched when mine was still, and when I tilted my head, she moved just a fraction too late, as though she had been caught pretending to be me. The house smelled of boiled cabbage and wet wood that evening, and the windows rattled with the soft, persistent rain. My mother was in the kitchen, humming a tired tune, and my father had gone to the tavern. I should have felt safe, but instead I felt her breath against my ear. Though the mirror stood several steps away, she whispered something I could not quite catch, a sound like the sigh of leaves against the window pane, and I remember the cold trail it left on my neck. I wanted to run, to hide beneath the thin blanket on my bed, but I could not move. My eyes clung to hers, and in that silent staring, something passed between us that I have carried all my life. At first, I thought it was only my imagination, the kind that children invent when they are lonely. But as the days stretched into months, her presence grew heavier. I would wake in the night and find myself glancing toward the mirror, heart pounding, sure that if I looked long enough she would be waiting. Sometimes I caught her smiling faintly, almost with pity, as if she knew the burdens that even then pressed upon me. My mother often said I looked guilty, even when I had done nothing wrong. Perhaps she sensed the secret I held, the silent pact between myself and the stranger in the glass. The sound of my father's boots still lives in me, heavy, measured, echoing across the wooden hallway floor. Each step was like the slow ticking of a clock counting down to an inevitable end. He was not a man of warmth. His words were clipped, his silence worse. In that silence, the walls of the house seemed to press closer, and the whispers in the mirror became sharper, insistent. Speak, resist, run. But I never did. I had learned too well that obedience was safer than defiance, and yet the reflection would tilt her head and mock me for my weakness, for my cowardice, until I turned away ashamed. When I was 15, the whispers deepened. No longer playful, no longer vague. They told me to test boundaries, to betray small trusts, to cut little wounds into my own skin just to watch them heal. I obeyed once, trembling, pressing the tip of a sewing needle into the palm of my hand until a bright bead of blood formed. In the mirror, she smiled. It was not cruel, but it was hungry. That night, as I lay in bed, my hand throbbing under the blanket, I thought of her face and felt both proud and disgusted. It was a dangerous comfort she offered, one that made me feel seen when no one else seemed to notice me. My mother's days were long and weary. She rarely lifted her head from her chores. My father's presence was a shadow I avoided. My siblings, younger, demanded what little softness she had left. And so, in the dim hours, I belonged to the girl in the mirror. One stormy evening, the glass flickered as though lit from behind, though no light burned in the room. I leaned close, heart thrumming, and her lips moved silently. I pressed my ear to the surface, the chill numbing my cheek, and I swear I heard her clearly for the first time. You deserve more. You are stronger than this. If you listen to me, everything will change. Her voice was low, steady, like the calm breath of someone who had waited a long time to be heard. The first time I acted on her command, it was small, almost laughable. I stole a piece of bread from the kitchen. My mother had counted carefully, and I knew she would notice. but I ate it quickly, alone in the corner of my room, crumbs sticking to my lips. In the mirror, she beamed with triumph, and in that reflection, I felt something I had never felt in my mother's weary eyes. Approval. It sickened me, yet I craved it. Over time, her demands grew. Not commands, exactly, more like invitations. To speak words I should not speak, to test how much I could take before shame drowned me. Sometimes I resisted, but resistance only made her stare harder, as if she could wait forever. Other times I gave in, and each time I did, the chain between us tightened. I began to wonder whether I was truly the one outside the mirror, or if she was, and I was the pale shadow trying to keep up. Don't forget to like this story, subscribe for more, and leave a comment if you've ever felt that strange pull when looking into a mirror too long. Even now, decades later, I struggle to understand. Was she only a figment of a lonely child's mind, or was she something older, something that lived in the silver of the glass and found me vulnerable enough to enter? I will never know. What I do know is that she shaped me. She guided my hand toward mistakes I cannot erase, and even as I sit here now, an old woman with trembling fingers, I sometimes feel her still. When the room grows dim and the mirror across from my bed catches my reflection, I see a flicker in the eyes that look back at me, a faint delay in their movement. I turn away quickly, pretending I imagined it, but deep inside, I know she is waiting, patient as ever, for the moment I will no longer resist her gaze. The worst of it began one winter, when the days were short and the house so cold that our breaths hung in the air. My father had grown harsher then, quicker to anger, his silences thicker. My mother moved like a ghost, her hands red from scrubbing, her eyes hollow. I sought the mirror more often, though I hated myself for it. She, the stranger, offered me promises, freedom, power, love, all the things I had never been given. And I, desperate for any tenderness, clung to her. One night, she told me to leave the window open, just a crack, though the frost bit through the air. She whispered that something would come, that I would see the truth of her world. I obeyed. I lay awake, shivering, the blanket pulled tight, staring at the mirror. Hours passed, and then I thought I saw movement in the glass, not just her, but shapes behind her, dim and shifting, like shadows caught in another room. My chest ached with terror and fascination. She pressed her hand to the glass, and without thinking, I pressed mine to the cold surface too. For a moment, I believed it softened beneath my skin, as though it might give way and let me through. I do not know how long I stood there, palm burning with cold, heart hammering, until footsteps creaked in the hall. My father. His voice barked through the door, asking what I was doing awake. I stumbled back to bed, trembling, but before I turned away, I saw her smile at me, with a promise that chilled me to the bone. Next time. And I believed her. Don't forget to subscribe, comment your thoughts, and tap like. It helps me keep sharing these memories that still echo through me. The nights after that blurred together. I began avoiding my friends at school, too distracted by the reflection that haunted me. My teacher scolded me for daydreaming, but it was not dreams I was caught in. It was her. Every spare moment, I sought her out, whispering questions, receiving whispers in return. Some were gentle, almost motherly. Others were cruel. She told me that pain was proof of life, that suffering was strength. And I listened, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. The breaking point came the night I finally saw her lips move faster than mine, her head tilt at a different rhythm, her eyes staring too long into mine without blinking. That was when I knew for certain. She was not me. And once I knew, I could never unknow. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tap the like button if this story touches you. That night, when her movements betrayed the truth that she was not me, not a trick of my tired mind, I felt something inside me split open like an old wound. I remember pressing my hand over my chest as though I could hold myself together, as though my bones might scatter across the floor if I didn't. The lamp on my desk buzzed faintly. The air smelled of smoke from the neighbor's chimney, and in the mirror, her smile widened with a quiet satisfaction that seemed endless. It was the kind of smile that made me feel like she had been waiting for me to realize this all along, like the game had finally been won, and I was the prize. After that night, mirrors no longer frightened me in the same way. They became inevitable. I sought them out, even when I told myself I shouldn't. The hallway mirror near the door, the faint reflection in the water bucket, even the glint of glass in shop windows. I caught her in all of them, watching me. Sometimes she appeared faint, blurred, as though the glass was too thin to contain her properly. Other times she was sharper than I was, clearer, as though I were the one trapped behind the glass and she the one walking free. That thought haunted me most. What if I was the reflection, and she the real girl? I tried to tell no one. Who could I have told? My mother, weary and sunken-eyed, had no patience for the strange ramblings of her daughter. My father, with his quick temper and heavier silences, would have accused me of lying or worse. My siblings were too young, their world still filled with toys and laughter. I bore it alone, carrying her whispers in my chest like a second heartbeat. The whispers changed as I grew older. They no longer urged only small acts of mischief, but larger choices, dangerous ones. She told me to walk alone at night, to see what might happen. She told me to speak cruel truths to friends and watch how quickly their trust would shatter. She told me to hide letters that weren't mine, to keep secrets that weren't meant for me. And though I resisted sometimes, there were nights when resistance felt useless, when her voice was stronger than my own, and I would obey. Each time, the shame lingered, but beneath it pulsed a thrill I could not deny. I felt alive, as though I had touched something forbidden. One winter morning, frost biting at the window, I caught my mother staring at me strangely as I brushed my hair before the cracked mirror. She was standing in the doorway, dishcloth in her hand, her lips pressed tight. When I met her gaze in the glass, she flinched. Just for a second, but I saw it. She looked as though she had seen someone else standing where I was. And in that second, I knew she too had glimpsed the stranger. But she said nothing. She turned and walked away, and from that day, she seemed to avoid looking at me too directly. Her silence felt like betrayal, like she had abandoned me to this thing inside the glass. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story. It helps me keep giving voice to memories others might rather stay buried. The turning point came the summer I turned 17. The air was heavy with dust and heat, and the river near our town had shrunk to a thin, sluggish ribbon. My father's temper grew short in those days, his anger like a storm waiting to break. I had learned to avoid him, slipping out of the house whenever I could. But one evening, I lingered too long in front of the hallway mirror, tracing the edge of my reflection with a trembling finger. She whispered louder than usual, her voice filling my ears. Tonight. Leave tonight. You cannot survive if you stay. Her urgency shook me. I had never heard her so insistent, so raw. My heart raced, and before I could think, I packed a small bundle bread, a scarf, a worn notebook. I slipped from the house as twilight fell, the sky bruised with purple clouds. I walked without direction, only away, always away, until the air cooled and the stars opened above me. My legs ached, my throat burned, but but I could not stop. I felt her guiding me, whispering each step. I reached a small village before dawn, my body trembling with exhaustion. I sat on a bench by the church, clutching my bundle, and in the faint reflection of the church's stained glass window, I saw her again. This time, she looked proud. Not mocking, not cruel proud, like a mother who had finally seen her child take her first steps. And I wept, because I did not know if I had saved myself or doomed myself. The days that followed blurred together. I worked where I could, scrubbing floors, carrying water, always moving, never staying long. Each town had its mirrors. Each mirror had her. Sometimes she smiled, sometimes she frowned. Once in a dim-lit inn, I saw her weeping, tears streaking down her face, though mine were dry. That image haunted me more than any other. I could not tell if she was mourning me or warning me. Years passed this way, and always she remained. When I fell in love for the first time, it was her voice I heard whispering doubts, urging me to test him, to wound him, to see if he would stay. He did not. When I married too young, too afraid of being alone, it was her I saw on my wedding day, her face behind the veil, her eyes hollow with knowing. And when my children were born, small and fragile, in my arms, I saw her in the polished brass of the basin, watching with an expression I could not name. Don't forget to comment if you've ever felt watched by your own reflection, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this confession. The older I grew, the more I began to realize that she was not only my reflection, she was the part of me I had tried to bury. The anger I swallowed, the grief I hid, the shame I carried. She was all of it, given shape in the silver of the glass. She was my shadow, my double, my curse. And yet, without her, I would never have survived. Without her whispers, I would never have left that house. Without her gaze, I might have disappeared long ago into silence, like my mother, like so many women before me. Still, I wonder, was she my salvation or my destruction? And as I grow old, as the mirrors in my house grow spotted and dim, I dread the day I look into one and see not her, but nothing at all. For what will I be without her? What will remain when the stranger in the mirror finally leaves me? Don't forget to like this story and subscribe. Your support helps me keep sharing the truths I've carried all my life. It was after my second child was born that the whispers took a darker turn again. Nights were long, the baby cried endlessly, and my husband grew restless, his patience fraying. I would rock the child by the small mirror in the nursery, and there she was, lips pressed tight, eyes unblinking. One night, when the crying grew unbearable, I heard her hiss sharply, "End it!" Just once, just a moment of silence. I froze, horrified. My arms tightened around the baby, and I turned away from the glass so fast I nearly stumbled. But the words lingered, poisoning the air, and I hated myself for even hearing them. From then on, I covered the mirrors at night. I draped cloths over them, hung scarves across them, anything to keep her from watching. Yet still, in the dark, I felt her. I heard her whispers in the rustle of fabric, in the creak of the floor, in the shadows that pressed against my eyelids. She did not need glass anymore. She was inside me, fused to me. And I knew there would be no escape. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tap the like button if this story touches you. I began to live in fragments after that. By day, I was the mother who smiled faintly, who cleaned and cooked, who rocked her babies with weary arms. By night, I was the woman who draped sheets over mirrors and whispered desperate prayers into the darkness. But she always found a way to answer. If not in glass, then in water, in the faint gleam of a window, in the polished curve of a spoon. No matter how small, any reflection became her doorway, and once I saw her, I could not unsee. My husband thought me distracted, perhaps even cold. He never knew why my gaze slipped so often to the corners of the room, why I shuddered when he handed me a cup of water and I saw her mouth moving silently in the surface. He dismissed it as nerves or as a woman's weakness. That was the word he loved. Weakness. He wore it like armor, reminding me again and again that men were strong, women frail, and that I should be grateful for the roof above my head. Gratitude. As if fear and silence were the only currencies I could pay him in. It was during those years that I first began to hear her differently. Not just as temptation, not just as cruelty, but as a mirror of my own rage. The rage I buried so deep it burned me from within. When my husband raised his voice, when he slammed doors, when he reminded me of my place, I saw her behind me, her lips curling, her fists clenched. She whispered of resistance, of sharp words, of sharper actions. And though I never dared obey those darker urgings, the knowledge that she carried them for me was a twisted kind of comfort. She was what I could not be. One evening, when the children were already asleep and the house was cloaked in that heavy silence only broken families know, I caught sight of her in the large mirror of our bedroom. I froze. She was not mocking, not cruel. She looked at me with eyes that seemed to burn, and she mouthed words I could read without sound. "You are not alone." My throat closed, and for the first time I whispered back, "Then help me." I do not know if she did, but something shifted after that. Small rebellions began to surface. I would let my husband's orders slip from my mind, forgetting them on purpose. I would keep a coin or two from the market change tucked away secretly. I began writing again, scribbling in that old notebook I had carried since I was a girl, filling its pages with the whispers I heard, the thoughts I could not speak. And though my husband mocked my scribbles, I hid them like treasures. The reflection always seemed brighter when I wrote, as though she were feeding from my words. Don't forget to like this story and subscribe. It helps me know these memories are worth sharing, even after all these years. But with each small act of defiance, guilt weighed heavier. My children looked at me with wide eyes, trusting, innocent, and I felt split in two. The mother who wanted to shield them, and the haunted woman who obeyed the whispers of a stranger in the glass. I feared I would pass her on to them, that one day they too would see more than themselves in the mirror. I prayed over their cribs at night, prayed that the glass would remain only glass for them. The years wore on, slow and heavy. Poverty clung to us like a second skin, and each winter carved deeper lines into my face. My husband grew harder, his body bent by labor, his patience eaten away by drink. And through it all, she never left me. Sometimes she was cruel, sometimes kind, but always present, like a second soul stitched into mine. One night, after a quarrel that left my voice hoarse and my hands shaking, I stood alone before the hallway mirror. The children were asleep, the house eerily still. My face was blotched from tears, my hair tangled, and yet when I looked at her, she appeared composed, almost regal, her chin lifted. She reached out, her hand pressed flat against the glass. Without hesitation, I lifted mine, aligning it perfectly with hers. For a moment, the cold surface softened, or perhaps it was only my imagination. But in that fragile second, I felt something pass between us, strength perhaps, or resolve. From then on, I stopped fearing her entirely. I began to think of her less as an intruder, and more as the truest version of myself. Not the obedient daughter, not the silent wife, but the woman who had always lived beneath the surface, waiting. I realized then that she had never left me. It was I who had left her again and again, out of fear, out of shame. And yet, even as I drew strength from her, I wondered if she was leading me toward salvation or ruin. Was she urging me to find freedom, or was she dragging me deeper into a darkness from which I would never emerge? I still do not know. Don't forget to comment your thoughts and subscribe. It means more than you know to keep this story alive. The breaking point came late one night when the house shook with my husband's rage. He had been drinking, his words slurred, but his fists steady. I had grown used to silence, to stepping back, but something inside me snapped. As he raised his hand, I felt her surge in me, a heat so fierce it seared my fear away. I did not strike him. I did not shout. Instead, I stared. I held his gaze with such unwavering defiance that for the first time in years he faltered. His arm dropped. He muttered something and turned away. In the mirror behind him she was smiling, not mocking, not cruel, but radiant, as if she had been waiting for this moment all my life. From then on, he never looked at me the same. Perhaps he sensed the change, perhaps he feared it. But I knew, in that moment, that I had finally allowed her voice to become my own. And yet, as I sit here now, old and frail, I wonder, did I win something that night, or did I lose myself entirely to her? For even in my solitude, in these quiet evenings where the only sounds are the ticking of the clock and the settling of the house, when I catch my reflection in the window, she's still there, watching, waiting. And sometimes, when my mind is tired and my body aches, I fear that when I close my eyes for the last time, it will not be me who dies, but her who finally steps free. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story if you've ever felt the weight of your own reflection pressing back at you. The children grew, as children do, with a resilience I still cannot understand. They learned to laugh even in rooms filled with silence, to find joy in scraps of freedom. And yet, I often wondered how much of my haunted gaze they absorbed. Once, my eldest daughter asked me why I always covered the mirrors at night. I froze. I wanted to tell her everything, to warn her, to beg her never to listen to what might whisper back, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I said it was for protection, to keep away bad dreams. She nodded, half believing, and skipped away. But later that night, I caught her staring into the bathroom mirror, her face serious, her hand hovering just above the glass. My heart stopped. I pulled her away too quickly, too sharply, and she cried, confused. That moment has never left me. What if it does not end with me? What if the stranger is not only mine to bear, but something that slips from generation to generation, seeking out those who are most fragile, most lonely? The thought chills me more than death. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tap the like button if this story touches you. The thought that she might one day reach my children gnawed at me like a worm in the wood. I began to study their faces when they looked in the mirror, searching for the faintest flicker, the smallest hesitation in their movements. Each time they brushed their hair or washed their hands, I stood nearby, tense as a wire, pretending to busy myself, but really watching their reflections. Most days, nothing happened, just their innocent selves smiling back, unaware of the shadow that had followed me for so long. But sometimes, a strange chill passed through me, and I could swear that the mirror's surface rippled like water. It was worst with my eldest daughter. She had eyes that mirrored mine, dark, restless, always searching for something beyond the surface of things. She carried silence in her like a second skin, and in that silence, I feared she would hear what I once heard. One evening, when she was about 10, I found her whispering softly to herself in front of the bedroom mirror. Her lips moved, but no sound reached my ears. She didn't notice me at first. Her gaze was locked on her own reflection. When she finally turned, she jumped, startled, and her cheeks flushed as though I had caught her in a crime. "What were you saying?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She shook her head quickly, muttering, "Nothing," and darted past me. I stood there long after she'd gone, staring at the mirror until my own reflection blurred with tears. From that night forward, I never left her alone in front of a mirror, if I could help it. I kept the smaller ones wrapped in cloth, claimed they were broken or unlucky, and I convinced my husband to move the hallway mirror into storage, telling him it brought me bad memories. He laughed at my superstition, but agreed, more out of indifference than care. Still, even without the glass, I knew the stranger could find her way into my daughter's world if she wanted. She had found her way into mine with far less. Don't forget to like this story and share it. Your support keeps these memories alive in ways I never managed alone. My fears began to shape the rhythm of our household. I opened windows often, letting light flood in, for daylight seemed to weaken the stranger's presence. I kept candles burning late into the night, so shadows had fewer places to settle. I began teaching my children old prayers, not because I believed they would protect them, but because the act of repeating words, of filling silence with sound, gave me some fragile comfort. My daughter recited them faithfully, though sometimes her voice drifted into a murmur that sounded eerily like the whispers I once knew. As the years slipped by, I noticed changes in myself too. I no longer trembled before the mirror as I once had. Instead, I stared longer, harder, daring her to move differently, daring her to speak. She never disappointed me. She was always there, sometimes smirking, sometimes solemn, sometimes filled with a grief so deep I wanted to reach through the glass to comfort her. There were nights I wondered if she was lonely, if she too was trapped in her own prison, condemned to watch me live while she remained in silence. Once, in the dead of winter, I woke suddenly to find the room ice cold. The candle had burned out, and the window pane glittered with frost. I turned my head and saw her standing in the mirror across the room, not lying in bed as I was, but standing, her body pale against the dark. She lifted her hand, beckoning. My heart thundered, my body rigid beneath the blanket. Slowly, without willing it, I swung my legs over the bed. The floor was freezing beneath my bare feet, but I walked toward her as though pulled by invisible strings. She smiled faintly, her eyes tender, almost pleading. I raised my hand to the glass, expecting the familiar chill, but this time it was warm, pulsing faintly, like the skin of something alive. My breath caught, and then, just as suddenly, the baby in the next room began to cry. The sound broke the spell. I stumbled back, heart racing, and when I looked again, she was only a reflection, lying in bed as I was, motionless. I held my child longer than usual that night, rocking back and forth until my arms ached. All the while, I could not shake the thought that if the baby had not cried, I might have stepped through, might never have returned. Don't forget to comment if you've ever felt pulled towards something you couldn't explain. Subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this story. The older my children grew, the more I tried to anchor myself in them. Their laughter, their questions, even their quarrels. These were the sounds that tethered me to the world. Yet the stranger never allowed me full peace. She lingered at the edge of every joy, reminding me that nothing was untouched by her shadow. When my son brought home his first drawing from school, proudly holding the paper smudged with crayons, I praised him, kissed his forehead. Later, when I glanced at the glass-fronted cupboard where the drawing was reflected, I saw her frown, shaking her head slowly as though to say, "This happiness will not last." And I hated her for it. But hatred was a weak shield. It never banished her, never silenced her. If anything, it fed her. There were moments when I felt she thrived on my anger, that the more I despised her, the stronger her presence became. It was only when I allowed myself to listen, to accept her as part of me, that her voice softened. That was the cruelest lesson of all. She became gentler when I surrendered. My husband grew older too, though bitterness aged him faster than time. He drank more, worked less, leaving heavier burdens on my shoulders. The stranger often mirrored him in grotesque ways. I would see her standing behind me as I scrubbed the floor, mimicking his posture, his gestures, her mouth curled in disdain. She seemed to say, "You are trapped just as your mother was, and just as her mother before her. The mirror is the only truth you will ever have." Sometimes, when despair pressed too heavily on me, I wondered if she was right. I wondered if women like me were doomed to see her forever, each generation carrying the curse in silence. One night, as I sat alone with only the clock ticking, I spoke aloud, not to God, not to myself, but to her. "If you mean to destroy me," I whispered, "then do it. But if you mean to help me, then show me how." My voice trembled, but the words felt heavier than prayer. She did not answer immediately, but in the mirror's surface, her expression softened, and for the first time in my life, she bowed her head, as though acknowledging me, as though I had finally spoken the words she had been waiting to hear. Don't forget to like this story, subscribe, and share. It's the only way these truths find their way out of the silence that bound me for so many years. From then on, something shifted between us. I no longer saw her only as tormentor. She became a companion, a witness, a reminder of the fire inside me that I had been forced to bury. When my husband died, suddenly, after years of bitterness, the house grew eerily quiet. People offered condolences, but most of me felt only relief, tinged with guilt. That night alone, I stood before the bedroom mirror. She was there, of course, waiting. I expected mockery or triumph. Instead, she reached out her hand, not toward me, but downward, as though inviting me to stand taller, to rise. And I did. I stood straighter, breathed deeper, and for the first time in decades, I felt free. And yet, freedom was not without its shadows, for with him gone, I could no longer blame him for all that haunted me. I had to face the truth. She had always been mine. My burden, my shadow, my double, and perhaps my truest self. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tap the like button if this story touches you. Freedom, when it finally came, did not arrive with the sweet relief I had always imagined. It crept into the rooms like a stranger, unsettling and unfamiliar. After my husband's death, I would sit at the kitchen table, the silence pressing down on me heavier than his voice ever had. For years, I had lived in resistance, in watchfulness, in fear of what he might say or do. Now there was nothing. Only the ticking of the clock on the wall, the hum of the wind outside, and the sound of my own breath. It should have been peace, but it felt instead like a void I could fall into and never climb out of again. She filled that void, of course. The mirror was never silent for long. Her presence seemed brighter now, her outlines sharper, as though his death had given her room to step closer. When I moved through the house, her eyes followed me more intently than ever before. Sometimes she smiled with quiet satisfaction, as though she had orchestrated it all. Other times she looked at me with pity, her gaze heavy, as though she knew that widowhood was its own prison. There were days when I resented her deeply. I would glare at the mirror and hiss at her under my breath, "You don't own me. You never did." But then her lips would move in perfect time with mine, mocking me, reminding me that even my defiance was only a reflection. My children noticed the change too. They were older by then, their faces lengthened, their laughter tempered by the weight of what they had seen growing up in our house. They asked me if I was all right, if I needed them to stay longer after they had begun building their own lives. I always told them to go, to live, to take what chances I never could. But in truth, when the door closed behind them and I was left alone in the dim rooms, I felt the ache of abandonment twist inside me. And in those hours, she was my only company. Don't forget to like this story and comment. It's the only way to keep these echoes alive beyond me. It was during one of those long, empty evenings that I began to speak to her openly. I would light a candle, sit before the mirror, and let the words spill out. I spoke of regrets, of mistakes, of the countless nights I had spent swallowing my own screams so my children wouldn't hear. I confessed the small betrayals, the hidden thoughts, the secret pleasures I had never dared admit. She listened, always, her expression shifting as though she understood. Sometimes her lips moved with mine, as if she were repeating my words back to me, sealing them into the glass. There was comfort in it, comfort and danger. The more I confided in her, the more I felt tethered to her. It was as though my truest self had never lived fully in this body, in this world, but inside her, waiting behind the silver sheen. I began to fear that one day I might step too close, lean too far, and never return. It was around that time that I began dreaming of her. In my dreams, she was not confined to mirrors. She walked beside me through the streets, silent but steady, her presence both terrifying and soothing. People passed by without noticing, as if I alone could see her. Sometimes she touched my arm, her fingers warm, and when I woke, I could still feel the faint pressure on my skin. The line between dream and waking blurred, until I could no longer tell which world was mine. One night, I dreamt I stood in front of the great mirror that had once hung in my parents' house, the crooked one from my childhood, the one where I first saw her clearly. She reached out, and I reached too. This time, there was no cold, no resistance. My hand slid through as though the glass were water. She pulled me gently, and for a heartbeat, I felt my body stretch between two worlds. When I woke, my hand was pressed against the small mirror by my bedside, my skin clammy, my heart thundering. I did not sleep the rest of that night. Don't forget to subscribe if you've ever felt the blur between dreams and waking. This story is my way of keeping that thin line from vanishing completely. As the years rolled onward, my children married, moved away, built families of their own. Their homes filled with warmth, with life, with laughter. Mine did not. Mine remained a house of echoes, each corner holding memories I wished I could forget. And in each reflection, whether in the polished surface of a kettle, the glass of a window, or the tarnished mirror above the sink, she remained, faithful as ever. At times, I wondered if she had spared me. If all those dark urgings in my youth, the whispers to harm, to betray, to run, had only been her way of keeping me alive, of pushing me toward survival when obedience would have destroyed me. Other times, I feared she had merely carved herself deeper into me, ensuring I could never be free. I lived suspended between gratitude and dread, never certain which I owed her. Then came the winter when illness struck me, a deep rattling cough that would not let me rest, fevers that left me trembling in sweat-soaked sheets. Alone in the house, I thought often of death. I wondered if she would vanish when I did, or if she would linger,
waiting for the next lonely child to gaze too long into a mirror. And I wondered, if I slipped away, would she finally take my place, walking out into the world, wearing my face, my voice, my memories? The thought chilled me more than the fever ever could. One night, when the sickness weighed on me hardest, I rose from bed and stood before the mirror. My face was pale, hollow-eyed, my hair clinging damp to my temples. She looked stronger, almost luminous, her skin unmarked by illness, her eyes bright with fire. For a moment, I envied her. For a moment, I wanted to step through and trade places, to let her live while I disappeared. But then I thought of my children, my grandchildren, and how they might look into a mirror one day and see not themselves, but her. And I knew I could not allow it. So I whispered, my voice hoarse but steady, "If you must stay, then stay with me. Do not follow them."
Do not follow anyone else. For the first time, her expression softened into something like sorrow. She pressed her hand against the glass, and though I dared not touch it, I believed, if only for a moment, that she heard me, that she agreed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Because these are the stories no one dares speak aloud, yet they live in the silence of so many lives. I survived that illness, though it left me weaker, my body slower, my breath shorter. Yet even in survival, I carried a sense of unfinished business, as though she and I were bound in a contract neither of us could escape. I began to write everything down, pages upon pages of confession, memory, reflection. Perhaps not for my children to read, but so that someone, someday, might understand what it is to live with a stranger behind the glass. And as I wrote, I felt her closer than ever. Sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I swore she leaned over my shoulder, reading each word as I inked it onto the page. At times she seemed pleased. At others, her mouth twisted with disapproval, as though I had told the story wrong. But always, she remained. Now, as the years fold in on me, I no longer fear the moment when I will face her for the last time. I only wonder what it will mean. Will I fade into her world, my body left behind like an empty husk? Or will she vanish with me, her whispers dissolving at last into silence? I do not know. But until then, I will keep writing, keep speaking, keep breathing her presence into words, because silence is what feeds her most, and I refuse to give her that. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tap the like button, because in the telling, I find the strength she once stole from me. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tap the like button if this story touches you. The more I wrote, the more I realized that memory itself is a kind of mirror. Every page became glass, every line of ink another reflection of the life I had carried in silence. Some memories came easily, sliding out like water. Others resisted, sharp and jagged, tearing through me as I forced them onto paper. She was always there in those moments, watching from the edges, her face shifting with each revelation, sometimes proud, sometimes reproachful, sometimes weeping silently, as if my confessions pained her too. I remember one afternoon, when the light slanted low across the table and the smell of damp autumn leaves drifted in through the window. I was writing about my childhood. About the first time, my father's silence pressed on me so heavily that I thought I might vanish into it. As my pen scratched across the page, I glanced up and saw her in the glass of the cabinet. She wasn't mimicking me. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, her posture upright, and she was watching me with the calm gaze of a teacher waiting for her pupil to finish. I almost asked her aloud if this was what she had wanted all along, that I give voice to the story she had lived inside me for so long. But I didn't. I lowered my eyes and kept writing. The strange thing was, the more I poured out onto those pages, the less her whispers filled my ears. It was as though each confession freed me from one of her threads, loosening the weave that had bound us. I slept better. I ate more easily. I could walk past a mirror without feeling my stomach twist in dread. Yet she never left. She lingered, quieter perhaps, but always there, as if waiting for me to reach some final truth that I had not yet dared write. Don't forget to like this story, and subscribe. It helps me keep unburdening these truths, which are heavier than they appear. There was one memory I avoided longer than all the rest. It was the night my daughter stood too long in front of the bathroom mirror, her face pale in the weak light, her hand hovering as though she felt the same pull I once had. I dragged her away, too roughly, and she cried, not understanding. I never explained. I could not. Writing of that moment, I felt my chest tighten as if iron bands were pressing in. I knew that if I admitted it, if I gave that memory shape in words, it would mean acknowledging that the curse was not mine alone, that she had touched my daughter too. When at last I forced myself to write it, my hand shook so badly I splattered ink across the page. The tears blurred my vision, and I could barely breathe, but I kept going. I wrote the truth, that I feared more for her than I ever had for myself, that I prayed she would never hear the whispers, that I sometimes covered mirrors in her home when I visited, making excuses she never questioned. And when I finished, I looked up, and in the darkened window, she was there. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me, as though her gaze reached across time and space, searching for someone else, for my daughter, for her daughter. The realization struck me so cold, I dropped the pen. I covered the window with the curtain and didn't write again for days. Don't forget to share this story if you've ever felt the weight of passing something unspoken to the next generation. I began avoiding mirrors more than ever, but avoidance only made her presence stronger. Even in spoons, in puddles, in the glimmer of my own eyes, she waited. And worse still, I began to dream of my daughter's face where mine should have been. Dreams in which the reflection smiled at me, not with my features, but with hers. It felt like prophecy, a warning, perhaps even a promise. That was when I knew I had to speak. Not to her she had heard me all my life, not to the mirror, but to someone of flesh and blood. The thought terrified me, but silence had been my prison too long. So one evening, when my eldest visited with her children, I asked her to sit with me after the others had gone to bed. I held her hands so like mine once were, and I tried to explain. Not in full, not the way I write it here. But I told her enough. I told her that sometimes mirrors hold more than our faces, that sometimes they whisper, and that if ever she felt the weight of another presence watching, she must not answer it. She listened politely, her eyes filled with concern, but I could see she didn't believe me. How could she? To her, I was only her aging mother, worn thin by years of hardship, perhaps drifting into strange superstitions. She squeezed my hands, kissed my forehead, and promised to call more often. I let her believe what she needed to believe, but inside I wept, because I knew the truth. Whether she believed or not, the mirror would come for her if it chose. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever tried to warn someone you love, even when you knew they couldn't understand. The years have thinned me. My body aches, my breath shortens, and the nights stretch long. I no longer move quickly to cover the mirrors. I let them stand, bare and waiting, because I know she will not leave me before the end. Sometimes I wonder if, when the final moment comes, I will see her face leaning out of the glass, welcoming me into her world. Other times, I wonder if I will see only my own hollow eyes and know that I invented her all along to survive what I could not name. But then I remember the times she moved differently, the times she whispered truths I had no way of knowing, the nights she looked at me with a sorrow deeper than my own. And I know she was real. She is real. And perhaps she is waiting not to take me, but to keep me from vanishing entirely. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment your thoughts, because every story told keeps the silence from swallowing us whole. Even now, as I sit at this worn table, the candle sputtering low, I can feel her presence in the window across the room. The night outside is heavy, the glass fogged faintly with my breath, and yet her outline is clear, sharper than my own reflection. She is watching, always watching. And in the stillness, I find myself asking, when my heart stops, will she step through at last? Or has she been the one telling this story all along? My voice only her echo on this side of the glass. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tap the like button if this story touches you. There are nights now when I wake and cannot tell if the room around me is real. The shadows seem thicker, the silence heavier, and when I glance at the darkened glass of the wardrobe door, she is already there, standing as though she had been waiting for me to open my eyes. Sometimes she looks like me, as I am wrinkled, bent, hair turned to silver. But more often, she appears as I once was, a girl with hollow cheeks and restless eyes, lips trembling between laughter and tears. To see her youth when mine has vanished feels like mockery, yet also like a reminder of everything I buried to survive. I lie awake, listening to the clock tick, each sound sharp as a drip of water in a cave. Tick, tock. Each second a reminder that time is not endless. And I wonder, has she been counting with me? Has she been measuring my years, my mistakes, my silences, waiting for the exact moment when the two of us will finally meet without glass between us? When dawn comes, I pretend the night was nothing more than a dream. I make tea, I open the curtains, I let the light spill across the worn floorboards. But even in daylight, her presence lingers. The kettle gleams, and I see her face curve across its surface. The window pane shivers faintly with the wind, and there she is, standing too close, her lips moving though I cannot hear. Even in the pool of water in the sink, her eyes stare back at me from beneath the ripples. There is no escaping her anymore. She is not in the mirrors alone. She is everywhere reflection can breathe. Don't forget to like this story and subscribe. It helps me believe that sharing these memories means something beyond the silence of these walls. I sometimes imagine what would happen if I smashed every mirror, broke every surface that could hold her. But I know better. Shards would only multiply her, scattering her image into 100 jagged faces. I tried it once, long ago, in a fit of desperation. I hurled a small mirror to the floor, watched it shatter into glittering fragments. For a heartbeat, I thought I had freed myself. But when I looked down, I saw her in every shard, dozens of her eyes staring back, her smile split into cruel splinters. I dropped to my knees, gathering the pieces with bleeding hands, whispering apologies until my throat burned. Since then, I have never broken another. Instead, I endure. I have grown used to her, in a way. I speak to her in whispers no one else can hear. I tell her of my aches, of the loneliness of old age, of the faces I miss that will never return. Sometimes she answers, her lips shaping words I cannot hear but feel inside my chest. Other times she only listens, and that is enough. There is a strange mercy in being heard, even if it is by a shadow. I wonder often what she truly is. A spirit? A ghost? The fractured piece of myself that never healed? Perhaps she is all of these, or none. Perhaps she is only the truth that no one else dares look at, the truth that we all carry shadows too heavy to bear alone. And perhaps the mirror is not a curse, but a confession made visible. Don't forget to comment your thoughts and share, because every reflection we face in silence grows stronger when left unspoken. Still, there are moments when I fear her power. Last winter, my granddaughter visited. She is a bright child, full of laughter, her hair catching the sunlight like spun gold. She ran through the house as children do, opening doors, chasing echoes. And then I found her standing before the tall mirror in the hall, the one I had never managed to part with. She was staring, utterly still, her small hand raised as though reaching. My heart froze. I called her name sharply, more sharply than I meant, and she jumped. She turned, her eyes wide, her cheeks flushed. "Grandma," she said softly, "there was a lady in there." My breath caught, but I forced a smile, told her it was only her reflection. She frowned, shaking her head. No, she was different. She looked at me like she knew me. That night, after they had left, I stood before the same mirror, my hands trembling. She was there, of course, but this time she was not looking at me. Her gaze was softer, tilted downward, as though she had indeed been watching the child. I pressed my palm to the glass and whispered, "No, not her. Take me, but not her." Her face changed then, not mocking, not cruel, but sorrowful, like a mother forced to refuse her child. For the first time, I thought I saw tears in her eyes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story, because some truths can only survive when carried forward by others. Since that night, I have lived with a heavier dread. It is no longer only my life that hangs between the glass and the world. It is theirs too, my children, my grandchildren. I cover mirrors when they visit. I light candles in every room. I speak prayers into the night, though I am no longer sure whom I am addressing. Sometimes, when the flame flickers and shadows dance across the walls, I feel her closer than ever, as though she stands just behind me, waiting for me to fall still enough for her to step forward. And yet, part of me wonders if she has been guarding me all along. If every whisper, every warning, every cruel temptation was not meant to ruin me, but to prepare me, to keep me alive through years that might otherwise have broken me. It is a thought that terrifies me as much as it comforts, because if she is my guardian, then she owns me more than ever. And if she is not, then she is simply waiting, patiently, for my final breath. I can hear the clock ticking now, each sound sharp as a nail driven into wood. The air is still, heavy. In the window before me, her face is clear. She is young tonight, younger than I ever was, and her eyes are filled with something I cannot name. She is not smiling. She is not mocking. She is only watching, as though the moment she has waited for all these years is drawing near. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tap the like button, because the telling is all I have left to keep her from taking everything in silence. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tap the like button if this story touches you. The days are shorter now. Even when the sun lingers, it feels pale, thin, like a candle nearly spent. I move through the house slowly, every step measured, my hands trembling even when I try to hold them steady. Age has hollowed me out, yet the mirrors still hold me fully. Sometimes I think they hold me more alive than I am in this flesh. I have stopped covering them. There's no point anymore. The stranger, my other self, my shadow, my double, has lived beside me too long to be hidden by a strip of cloth. When I walk past, she follows with a grace I no longer possess. When I pause, She stands straighter than me, unbent by years, untouched by loss. When I weep, she does not. When I laugh, rarely, she smiles, as though she had been the one to teach me how. Last night, I dreamed of her again, but differently. We were standing not on opposite sides of the glass, but face to face, in the same room, no barrier between us. She reached out, touched my cheek with a tenderness I had never felt from anyone else. Her hand was warm, alive. She whispered, not the cruel urgings of my youth, not the sharp commands, but a single phrase. You can rest now. I woke with tears streaming, my chest aching with something I could not name. I wonder if that is what death will be. Not darkness, not silence, but stepping through into her world, or allowing her finally to step into mine. Perhaps we will merge, and I will become whole at last. Or perhaps I will fade, and she will remain, wearing my face, my memories, carrying forward what I could not. That thought frightens me, yet it also comforts me. To vanish entirely is unbearable. To be remembered, even through her, feels like a kind of survival. Don't forget to like this story and share it. It helps me believe that speaking these truths leaves something behind, something more than silence. I have been sitting here for hours, the candle burning low, the shadows long. Across from me, in the darkened window, she waits. Tonight she looks different again. Not young, not old, but ageless. Her eyes steady, her lips calm. For the first time, she is not urging me, not mocking me, not warning me. She is simply present. It feels almost like companionship. I think of my children, my grandchildren. I think of the way their faces light when they laugh, the way their footsteps fill the house with life when they visit. I think of the small, fleeting moments of joy I managed to steal, even in a life filled with fear and silence. And I think of her, always her, standing beside me through every season, every sorrow, every fleeting joy. She has been curse and comfort, torment and guide. Without her, I might not have endured. With her, I was never free. And yet, as the candle flickers lower, I feel strange peace. I am no longer running from her, no longer begging her to leave me or to stay. I am only waiting, as she has waited all my life. Perhaps she was never the stranger at all. Perhaps she was the truest part of me, the voice I was not allowed to use, the strength I was forbidden to show, the shadow that carried all I could not bear. The clock ticks on. The house is still. My body grows heavy. My eyelids sink. In the window, she leans closer, her face nearly touching the glass. I feel warmth, though the air is cold. And in that warmth, I understand. She has not come to take me. She has come to walk with me. Wherever it is, I must go next. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tap the like button. Because in these words, in this telling, I have given her and myself a voice at last. And now, as the night deepens and the flame burns low, I am ready. Ready to meet her, not as reflection, not as stranger, but as the part of me that has waited faithfully in every mirror, every shadow, every silence. I rise slowly, my hand reaching out one last time. The glass is warm beneath my palm. Her eyes are steady, her lips curve in the faintest of smiles. And together, at last, we step through